Hello, this is science for cycle 3, week 7. So this week we're kind of making a change. For the next few weeks we will be talking about the parts of the human body. And so instead of doing hands-on experiments, we're just going to be kind of learning the functions of different parts of our body in a more systematic way. So today, to introduce the idea of the human body and the different parts of it, we'll be learning about cells, tissues, and organs as kind of the basic parts of our body that we need to become familiar with. So I'd invite you to start off by reading the Bible verse from Job at the beginning of your lesson, and you can talk through how God formed each of us. Maybe some of your students know some of the organs already in their body, and so you can have them share briefly the organs that they know and their function, and you guys can all appreciate together the glory of God in how He created us and how He created those organs to function. And then we'll move into talking about cells initially. So each student is going to get just a bunch of Legos. It'll be more than this, but just a pile of Legos that they'll have. And you can invite them to take a little bit of time to look through their Legos. Ask each student maybe to pick out their favorite Legos and share them with a partner or with the class. Maybe they've got one that they think is really cool for some reason, and you can just let them spend a little time looking at that. And then move into talking about how cells in our body are kind of like individual Legos that we're looking at. They can look very different and they have different functions, but they are the basic building block of all living things. So each part of our body is made up of cells, and we have tons and tons of cells in our bodies. So there's some great diagrams in your lesson plan of a basic diagram of a cell, which I wouldn't spend too much time on. But then also some pictures of different types of cells. So you can just kind of briefly breeze over some different types of cells that we have in our body and what their functions are. So I think some of the ones I have listed are things like blood cells, skin cells, nerve cells, muscle cells, bone cells. So you can kind of just let them peek at the pictures for those and then describe kind of what those cells do, just so they have an appreciation that cells are these tiny things that we can't see without the use of a microscope, that they can look very different and that they can have very different functions, but that our entire bodies and the bodies of all living things are made up of these tiny building blocks called cells. And then at the end of each section within this lesson plan, there's just some kind of fun facts that you can use as multiple choice questions, or for younger kids, you can just give the facts if you want, however you want to use them. So then you'll move into talking about tissues. So then take a minute and challenge your kids, again in just a couple minutes, to use all of the Legos that they were given to build something. Doesn't have to be anything super cool, just somehow get all the Legos put together. So I'm sure they'll come up with things much better than what I came up with very quickly, but they might have things that look kind of like this, blocks put together. And you can explain that that's kind of like the tissues that we have in our body. So if a single Lego was like a cell, then a group of Legos all together is like a tissue in our body. So tissues are made up of groups of cells that are working together to perform a specific function. So again, there's a nice picture in there of 4 different types of tissues that we have in our body and a description of what those tissues do. And again, the students can appreciate that they have very different functions and that they look very different, but reiterate that they are made up of cells working together to perform kind of the same purpose. And there are some more fun facts at the end of that section about tissues that you can share as multiple choice questions or just as facts. The last section is organs. So now is when you get to take all of those tissues that your students formed out of Legos, and you get to make them into one piece. So you can do that however you want, or you can have students help you or do it together, however you want. I'm not going to do it very well right here, but somehow get all of those pieces together to form something. Now it's not going to maybe look the coolest, but you want to get all those pieces together to form something. And you can explain that that's kind of like an organ. So an organ in our body is made up of different types of tissues, and they're all working together to perform one major function of our body. So you can give examples like our heart is working to pump the blood throughout our body. Our lungs are working to take in the air that we need and send out the air that we don't need. So these are major functions that our body needs, and our organs are designed to do those functions, and they're made up of many different types of tissues. So again, review that we've got our individual cell, which is like one building block. We've got our tissues, which are like some building blocks put together to perform a specific purpose. And then we've got our organ, which is like a bunch of tissues that are working together to perform one big purpose that's a major function of within our bodies. So there's a few examples of different types of organs. There's not a ton of detail in that section because we will get to talk a lot more about our organs and organ systems in the next few weeks here. But I would just make sure to emphasize that while we built our organ, our tissues and our organ without any real specific direction other than to get all of our Legos used up, God designed our tissues and our organs and our cells in a miraculous way so that they work so perfectly we don't even have to think about most of our body functions most of the time. So try to reiterate kind of that appreciation for how God designed each piece of our body and how unique each of our cells and tissues and organs are, but how they work together to do what our body needs so that we can be equipped to do the work that God has for us. So you can review kind of what you went over today with cells, tissues, and organs. If you do have extra time, you can feel free to perform the same exercise again and quiz your kids on what they're doing as they're building their cells into tissues and then into organs again. And that is about it for this week. And then next week we will start talking about some of the major organ systems within our bodies. All right, thank you.